Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. You are tuning in at IMTV with Political Insights, 40 minutes of political knowledge. I'm Irfan.
And I'm Alia.
And we'll be the host for the last episode for Season 7 of Political Insights. So before we go dive into our topics, don't forget to follow IMTV at all of our social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and TikTok. Alright, so Alia,
Yes.
how has your week been? I know that now is the crucial week, and also there's been many assignment and due deadlines. So how are you coping with it?
Well, not so well. But I feel like, all of us feel the same way with all the assignments and the deadlines and submissions. But I hope we're coping well, actually. Just to try to get through this week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so have you been have you been on Twitter recently?
I guess I don't have too much time to go through Twitter's do the assignment and stuff, but sometimes I do. Yeah, open Twitter.
Right. And how do you feel? How do you feel about everything that's going on right now with you?
I think there's a lot of things happening, and also with the things that I need to do. So it's kind of like, the information is so massive.
Right. So the reason why I asked you about Twitter is because recently, right, despite everything that's going on, as much as it's really hectic here in our university life, it's also really hectic on Twitter right now. Because there's this hashtag that's been going viral, which is hashtag Let Her Learn, and it's basically a hashtag in terms of protesting against the Taliban rule in Afghanistan when they imposed a ban on women's education and specifically higher education. So when the hashtag was released, not just people in Afghanistan, but all over the world, they were spreading this hashtag, and a lot of the people were also supporting this protest against the government, and in a good sense,
way,
yeah. the men in Afghanistan are also supporting this in terms of them, for example, running out of their examination hall as medical students
During
to
the
show
examinations, they go out of
exactly,
the exam hall.
exactly,
Wow.
to show that they are in support of the women in Afghanistan. So what have you, seen in terms of this hashtag?
In rather than hashtag, I think I've seen it in the videos, sort of.
Really,
Yeah, like
really.
example, like a lecturer in Afghanistan, he stripped off all of his academic achievements in order to support the protests against the Taliban's government. Yeah.
All right, so I think we have this sort of like surface knowledge on what's going on, but we need to dive deeper, into the discussion on what's going on in Afghanistan right now, which is the Remorseless ruling and the threat that the Afghanistan is bringing to that the Taliban is bringing to the country right now. Yeah, so today for tonight's episode, we have Dr. Danial Muhammad Yusof, who is an associate professor in the Department of Political Science at IUM, and also the principal researcher of To Lead for Peace. And for our second guest to discuss on the topic today, we have Brother Huzayl Muhammad, who is the president of Harmoni Malaysia, as well as a graduate in political science. So welcome to Political Insights. How are you both?
Thank you. We're fine. Alhamdulillah, good. Good to be back.
So I believe that these two guys are familiar faces, and I'm really excited to dive right into the discussion tonight. Okay, so shall we start? All right. So for our first question, it's for Dr. Danial. We always hear the term Taliban, right? So who does it actually refer to, and how did it come to be?
Okay, thank you, Alia, for the question. If you look at the history of Afghanistan, and if you look at the origin of the word Taliban, and if you refer to the Pashto and Arabic origin, Talib or Taliban, it refers to basically students and seekers. Yeah, and in the history since 1994, you can say, the Taliban was essentially set up as a political movement led by students who were learning in madrasas in eastern and southern parts of the country. So under Mullah Omar, they galvanized themselves as a political movement and started to push back the influence of the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. And from 1996, they started to establish a government of sorts until 2001. So they have experience in the governance of Afghanistan. And of course, we associate them with the kind of Puritan or austere interpretation of Islamic law or Sharia. And of course, they were then removed. Now we can refer to this as Taliban 1.0. Yeah, they were removed as a result of the global war on terror after 9/11, after which, of course, the failed global war on terror until 2021, which eventually led back to their reclaiming of the country. Yeah. So if they had only controlled 3/4 of the country in Taliban 1.0, now they effectively control the entire country. Now we are 1 year after the de facto emergence of Taliban.
All right. I thank you, Dr. Danial, for answering the questions. So I think the second question will be directed to Brother Huzayl. Okay, so how did the Taliban rise back into power and form the current Afghanistan government?
Right. First of all, thank you for the question. How actually Taliban be in power is first thing first on the Joe Biden policy, I would say, to bring back troops of US in Afghanistan. So the main motive of it, I presume, because of the war on terror, like Dr. said, had wasting a lot of money and also human resources. There are millions of US Army who killed, and also Afghanistan citizen itself were killed, and so on and so forth. So Joe Biden's maybe see that this is not going anywhere, and maybe US is also playing with or having an economic issue, so they bring back all the troops from Afghanistan, and that leave some room for Taliban to actually be in the power because of as mentioned by Doctor, late in year between, I mean 2021, they have secured all Afghanistan area. So it made them easy to actually govern, and also former uh, government also fled away from Afghanistan. So as they had their base there, so it's easy for them to emerge as some sort of government in Afghanistan. Yep.
Thank you so much, Brother Huzayl. All right. So next is a question for Dr. Danial. Right. So from the way that you can observe the administration style of the current government and their application of law, right? How do you think, or do you think that the Taliban actually has the ability to properly govern Afghanistan? So what are your thoughts on that?
As I mentioned, they've had experience in governing the country, and of course, if you remember, for the past year or so, after August 15th of 2021, uh, they quite quickly announced a government, a cabinet of sorts. And this cabinet, of course, included various portfolios from education to intelligence to defense to finance, among other positions. They're quite aware of what is required for them. And in a way, you can say that they've become also more politically savvy in their communication and diplomacy with the world. So that's why initially there was a kind of cautious optimism about this Taliban government being different from the first version. But I think of late, I think over the past 3 months or so, we've seen a kind of decline in that projection of moderation that they tried to do, diplomatically speaking anyway. So if I remember correctly, a lot of the concerns that came up with Taliban 1.0 is rising again, pertaining to women's education and so on. So it's quite surprising in a sense, because some people are saying that there may be disputes within the Taliban itself about women's education. And in that regard, there seems to be flip-flopping on policies as well. Because 3 months ago, they actually allowed students to partake in entrance exams and also to perhaps register in certain programs. They were strict on various programs. They did not allow women to participate, for example, in I think communications and among other programs. Yeah. But then suddenly the spate of bad news came in the media about the block on women's partaking in public parks. Yeah. Also about blocking women's education at secondary and tertiary level. And all of this is basically giving red flags in relation to the situation that we feared may and could happen as a result of the de facto government.
Okay, all right. So I think before we go to commercial break, we can ask one more question to Brother Huzayl. Okay, so public opinion is very important when we talk about politics. So do you think how do you perceive that people in Afghanistan perceive the Taliban?
Right. First thing first. It is very hard to actually find the actual voices of Afghanistan citizen, because I mean the rights for journalism itself is very limited there. But we can see, even after the Taliban announced their leadership, there are millions, if I'm not mistaken, 3 millions Afghanistan fled away at the airport. That shows, I think, the number significant enough to show that most of Afghanistan citizens dissatisfied or very pessimistic with the leadership of Afghanistan. And up until now, I think it is pretty obvious that most of Afghanistan citizen didn't like that much on how Taliban govern the countries. And there are few interview conduct with refugees of Afghanistan speaking the same thing. So I think we can conclude or presume that they are afraid of Taliban's policy, and they are not satisfied enough with Taliban leadership. Yep.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for answering our question. It's because that a lot of people are also questioning whether, when they tell that, oh, are they really trusting the current government, or do they actually really just have no choice, right? So that's something to ponder about. And from what you've said, I think we already know the answer, right?
Yeah.
So thank you so much. Okay, so before we proceed to dive deeper into our topic tonight, we'll be taking a short break, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Assalamualaikum, and we're back with the next session of our topic of discussion today. So previously we have talked about the introduction to Afghanistan and Taliban's threat, and also we have talked about the public opinions of people in Afghanistan towards the Taliban. So I guess we can dive deeper in the topic of discussion. So first I would like to direct these questions to Dr. Danial. So with the current situation in which the people has been imposed many ban and also limitations, so do you think that the conditions of their political development will inhibit or render them incapable of having the opportunity to participate in politics?
Yes, there's no point in talking about political participation in Afghanistan. If you look at Freedom House, which has been a flagship for civil and political liberties, they monitor countries around the world. If you look at the report, all of the scores shows that Afghanistan is in decline. This is, of course, because of their removal, because of the de facto Taliban government. It resulted in the removal of an elected government and legislature. So this is one thing that we have to remember. At the same time, as I mentioned earlier, there were elements of cautious optimism on the part of the international community in trying to advise and engage with them so that situations for political participation may improve. But nevertheless, it has been proven to be wrong so far. And in that regard, you can say that, if I'm not mistaken, the Freedom House score for Afghanistan is 10 over 100. So fail lah, lagi teruk pada fail kat UIA kalau dapat 40 ke apa. But basically, what I'm trying to say is that it lacks external and internal legitimacy. Yeah. As far as external legitimacy, we know that a number of countries try to engage with them, and they do have economic relations, including the likes of course, Pakistan, China, Russia to a certain extent. But even if you follow the news of late, there have been problems with Pakistan. And this is because of the independent Taliban in Pakistan, the TTP, which has begun to try impose some measure of authority along the Durand Line border between Pakistan and Afghanistan. And you see situations getting probably worse politically between these two countries at least. So it's beginning to impact regional politics in a negative way as well. Of course, as far as you ask, civil liberties, political development is something that we will not be able to see, or to a certain extent, even acknowledge and affirm in terms of accuracy. Yeah. Um, I just want to add something before I end. Is that with the blocking of women, not just in education, but even in certain work sectors, including NGOs. It means that NGOs, by the likes of UN or even EU, working under that banner, will not be able to function properly. And as a result, the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan will worsen. And without us actually getting the right information out into the rest of the world for us to assess the situation. Okay.
Right, thank you so
Thank you.
much, Doctor. So from what you said, I would just like to direct a question related to that to Brother Huzayl. In terms of what I've mentioned before on the banning of university education for females in Afghanistan, how do you think this is going to impact not just the female of Afghanistan, but the entire population? Because it's definitely going to be a generational impact. So could you enlighten us on that?
Right. My perspective of seeing this is in the longer term, when women are denied in terms of their education, and not just tertiary, or high school, even universities, we lack of women that can raise their children in terms of intellectual capacity. So in the longer term, in future, uh, there are probably lack of generation who are, who are aware of what happened in Afghanistan. So the lack of generation that is aware enough what happened, their rights has been denied and so on so far. Uh, it tend to be future generation are supporting what Taliban are doing because they don't know what is right and what is wrong in their country. So I think it's a longer effect, and something that is very problematic will happen in Afghanistan if no starting from this policy of banning education to women. Yeah.
And I
Right.
think we understand how important education is, and
Yeah.
it's going to terribly impact them, and it's going to limit so many talents of the population in Afghanistan. So, as Dr. Danial has mentioned also, with the NGOs and humanitarian aid workers, right, in Afghanistan right now, they've also imposed a ban on them. So, how do you think this is going to impact in the sense of where the citizens are going to seek for assistance and help?
I see. Um, uh, that's the most worrying issues when humanitarian and I mean the welfare support that is not coming from government are being denied. So they have no other channel other than so-called uninvited help from UN and so on and so forth. But to make it worse, when women are being denied and humanitarian works uh, denied there, the issue that not just happened between or not just happened in our normal issues such as hunger, uh, lack of job and so on and so forth, but also issues revolve around women, which is period poverty issue. Their menstrual sanitary pad is very hard to find there. So the statistic, if I'm not mistaken, from UN shows that after the Taliban takeover, Taliban 2.0 takeover, uh, the issues of menstrual hygiene is become worse in Afghanistan. So uh, I don't see any opportunities for them to actually get some help other than intervention from non-governmental international NGO basically. Yeah.
Right.
Right. Thank you, Brother Huzayl, for answering the question. So I think this woman empowerment thing has become something interesting in our topic today.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it is important, and also it is very you know, it is important that we take note of this thing.
Right.
So in accordance to that, I would like to ask Dr. Daniel. So as we have discussed right now, what do you think that international community has done in order to help these women or the vulnerable groups such as the religious minorities and also ethnic minorities in the country of Afghanistan?
Yeah, they've been trying to help. So that's why, for example, after 2021, there was recognition, right?
Yeah.
Not recognition, but there was engagement on the part of the
Mhm.
European Union and even the United Nations. They have a special envoy looking into Afghanistan. But of course, as I mentioned, because of the blocking of women from working in the humanitarian sector, it has also caused a kind of rift between the Taliban and these organizations into furthering help. So it seems to be that the Taliban, with these policy measures, they've actually become more isolationist in that sense. And I think we will be lacking the necessary information to make the right assessment. Of course, even Malaysia, for example, we are engaging with them through our own CSOs. Yeah. But again, we will only be able to guess as to why and how international NGOs, including Muslim countries, are unable to engage with them constructively. And I think this is a bad indicator of how things are developing in the country.
Right, and I think we've also seen that in Afghanistan right now, there's international food aids, right, and all sort of aids that's going that's there in Afghanistan right now. But I think another point that from what I have gained from what you've just said just now, is that it's more than just the bare minimum, right? It's the development of the people there. It's not
Yeah.
just helping them in terms of their
Basic
basic
necessities.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a lot more that we have to help in terms of the people, the welfare, and how it's going to be for the people in Afghanistan, right? So before we continue, we'll be right back after this short commercial break. Stay tuned, don't go anywhere. This has been Political Insights.
Assalamualaikum. We're back for the last session of today's episode. So previously we have talked about the conditions under the administration of Taliban in Afghanistan. So yeah, I think we can proceed to the next question.
All right, so our next question is going to be for Brother Huzayl. So like we talked before, right? there's so many deprivations that the people in Afghanistan are going through. So when we talk about Muslim politics, right, in the Muslim world, how do you think the Muslim world actually plays a role in terms of helping the people in Afghanistan, and what exactly are the roles that can be played by them?
Right. That is a very interesting question because we can see that there are double standard in responding to Afghanistan issue compared to Palestine issue.
Right.
I think because of we have some sort of belief that Palestine is our priority compared to Afghanistan and so on and so forth. And even OIC itself, the largest Islamic organization, which includes, if I'm not mistaken, more than 50 countries, also did not offer or did not create any aggressive action in regards to Afghanistan issue. There are few statements. There are few disagreement and so on so far posted in media and posted in website, but there are no aggressive action taken. So in terms of Muslim community, it is quite difficult because of Taliban itself is pretty much different from uh, Al Qaeda or ISIS. They pretty much have some ideological war against Western, but Taliban did not play that much. Maybe or no, I mean Taliban as I will put it as a near enemy in their country. So their purpose is to maintain peace and order or law and order in their country. So I think that's why Muslim community didn't give that much attention. So how we can help? I think one way is through not bilateral lah, through is Islamic country or Muslim majority country, their government should play significant role in denying or even we are denying the legitimacy of Afghanistan, but play a significant role such as groups of Malaysian country offer something or offer certainty of needs for people in Afghanistan. So the main the main answer is that Muslim community should have aggressive response towards the Taliban governance. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you for the answers. All right, it is interesting that Brother Huzayl talked about OIC. So for the next question that will be asked to Dr. Danial, we would like to ask, so OIC, is the Islamic Regional Cooperation, and do we have any clear actions or direct intervention from OIC towards the issue? And what would you say about the situation in which the OIC itself does not take so much concern about this and also leaving it most directly to the US for the direct intervention?
Well, the situation right now in relation to women's education and so on, for me, is a direct result of the failure of the OIC. They've been the major dialogue engagement partner in relation to women's education since the beginning of the year, actually. So what's happened? What's collapsed in relation to the engagement sessions? So right now, what we're seeing right now is the fallout of the failure of those engagement sessions. And so we see countries from the West and Asia, I think about 12 countries have come out with statements condemning the policy on women's education. Muslim countries, including of all countries, Saudi Arabia and Turkey, coming out to call this policy as being not just un-Islamic, but also inhumane. So just not to beat about the bush here, I mean, it's really the failure of the OIC in relation to this. And we see, I think, a lack of concern on the part of the Muslim world. There's clearly not enough being done, even by IUM, for example. There's a lot that we can do, being one of the premier universities in the Muslim world. Where's the show of solidarity from IUM students? You can imagine IUM campus itself, if we are bereft of 3/4 of the population who are women in IUM, it will be an empty university. So why does this not resonate more with us, and I think there should be a more, I think, overt effort on our part in Malaysia, because we do represent the Muslim world. There's more than 100 countries represented by IUM here.
Mm.
So maybe something good that can come out from this talk that we have tonight, a movement that can be not just a hashtag, it should be beyond that.
Right.
And we should normalize and mainstream what's actually happening in what should be happening. Yeah, as far as education is concerned, we're totally disregarding Islamic history in relation to the wife of the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as well as the founder of the university in history as well was a woman, a Muslim woman. So we have to go back to this, and we have to normalize and mainstream this awareness. And of course, OIC is again an organization that has failed on numerous occasions, including, for example, the Rohingya crisis and whatnot. We don't really expect anything from them.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So that was a lot taken, first of all. And as you said just now, that there needs to be more direct intervention. And in terms of us, especially as IUM students, actually voicing out for these matters, because it's, like you said, more than just a hashtag, right? So, Brother Huzayl, do you think that, from all that's been said just now, do you think that change is still possible? Do you think that, there's still a way for Afghanistan people to actually hope for an improvement in their government that can satisfy all of their needs?
To be honest, I'm very pessimistic on Taliban getting better, because we do have some hope during their first appearance in Taliban 2.0. But a year later, they prove who they really are, and I don't think that in future they could be any better. However, in terms of hopes that Afghanistan, we don't have any precedent yet, other than the intervention of foreign intervention to actually maintain peace and order in Afghanistan. So maybe US could invade again in more good ways, and not being hypocrite out of it. Maybe we could see Afghanistan being better after this. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So thank you, Brother Huzayl. So I guess what Brother Huzayl has said, that actually the reputation of Taliban, basically they give the good impression first. They give the
Right.
first good impression. However, it turns out it the same as before. Yeah.
How it is as right
Yeah,
now.
that's the one.
Exactly.
Right. So I think this is the last question for tonight's episode, and it'll be directed to Dr. Danial. So Taliban themselves has been an extreme Islamic fundamentalist group, and people most likely to relate them to terrorist group, in which somehow it creates a stereotype towards a Muslim world and Muslim
Right.
communities. So how can we make sure that the world knows that they do not represent Islam as a whole?
Yeah, of course, we have to make certain distinction about Islamic representation in the Muslim world, right? So the Taliban itself is, of course, identified as a kind of extreme Puritan government and movement. But of course, you have to understand that it's not the same as Al-Qaeda. It's not the same as even to a certain extent, perhaps even the TTP, the manifestation with the Taliban in Pakistan. And if you look at the security dynamic in Afghanistan, there is a common enemy in the form of ISIS-K, ISIS Kandahar. So this may be a security channel that can be explored in order to perhaps demand certain changes in terms of policy from the Taliban government, in the sense that there is a common enemy that is bearing a threat on the idea of security and peace that they championed since they took over. So of course, the idea here is that none of these organizations represent the mainstream Muslim world. And I think we have to try harder to mainstream ourselves in relation to the depiction of true Islam. As far as I think it's just simply another black spot, a black dot, as a milestone of Muslim history right now.
Alright, so thank you, Dr. Daniel, for the very comprehensive answer. Alright, so I guess that would be the questions, all of the questions for today's
Right.
episode. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Alright, so I guess to conclude a little bit about the episode today. So yeah, it's very interesting that Brother Huzayl also has said about his pessimistic view on the Taliban, you know, because they give the first good impression and suddenly they turn out to be the same as before. And also, I think it is also important to note what Dr. Daniel has suggested for the students to take more actions actively and to do more direct and overt actions in order for us to make sure that you know, this thing, we show our solidarity towards them since they are our sisters and brothers. Yeah, and also about the you know, suggestions for the people to you know, make ourselves more mainstream.
Right.
Yeah, you know, to show ourselves more in order for us to depict how Islam should be and how people should view us.
Right. Thank you so much for both of our guests. It has been a very insightful session, and you know, it's not every episode where we discuss on international topics, so it's been a pleasure to be able to talk on this matter, and I think that we should discuss it more. We should raise our voices and, you know, state our opinions on this matter in order for us to be more heard, like you said just now, and really show ourselves as you know, the true Muslims that we are. So thank you so much again. And unfortunately, we have come to the end of our episode. This is the last episode, unfortunately, of Political Insights Season 7. Before we go, don't forget to follow us on all of our social media accounts: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and TikTok. So this has been Alia Daniel.
Irfan.
And, you know, see you again. Good night. Thank you so much.